The citadel didn't orbit the planet so much as loom over it, like a crown that had decided gravity was optional. Marek Vale stepped out of the shuttle and into an airlock that scanned him with the tenderness of a tax audit. A soft tone chimed in his skull as his translator implant synced. "Welcome," the wall politely lied. "Well," Marek whispered to the glowing indicator, "either you're sincere or you're about to charge me rent." 4 Lyran guards waited beyond the lock. Their armor was dark and glossy, swallowing reflections. Their faces were almost human, until the long ears swept back in elegant points, like the universe had taken woman and sharpened it. The lead guard inclined her head. "Human Marek Vale, proceed." "My implant calls me by my full name," Marek muttered as he walked. "At home it calls me invoice pending." No reaction. Lyrans treated humor like a mild pathogen. The corridor curved just enough to make his inner ear complain. Pale alloy walls threaded with living circuitry pulsed faintly, like the station was breathing. Doors opened before he reached them, as if the citadel disliked hesitation. They passed a window. Below, the planet's night side glittered. Patrol craft traced disciplined arcs, leaving brief luminous trails, geometry drawn to remind everyone who owned the sky. "Beautiful," Marek said. "The planet?" one guard asked through the implant. "The implication," Marek answered, then stopped talking before he was arrested for philosophy. A reception chamber swallowed them. Translucent panes of light, quiet movement, diplomats gliding as if loud footsteps were a crime. Marek found the human delegation near a column of black crystal. Ambassador Ree wore calm like armor. "Vale," she murmured. "Remember, smile, translate, don't improvise." Marek nodded. "I have never improvised in my life." "Good. We go in when they call us." The seam at the far end opened without sound, turning darkness into a doorway. Beyond it waited the audience hall, too wide, too clean, too certain. The mirror floor held everyone's reflections like evidence. Light fell in cold sheets from nowhere. A dais rose beneath a slow-turning crown of metallic petals, hovering as if it didn't trust the air. The court was assembled, nobles with long ears and longer patience, advisors whose eyes looked polished by secrets, guards with energy-anchored spears that pretended to be ceremonial. Marek's implant kept whispering etiquette prompts into his ear: when to bow, how long to hold eye contact, which gestures meant respect and which apparently meant proposing marriage to a warship. His jaw tingled from the data stream. He resisted the urge to ask for a pause, like this was a video buffering. Behind him, Ree breathed. "Do not say anything that isn't pre-approved," Marek murmured without moving his lips. "Understood. If I start to panic, I'll just think very loudly in English." "That's not how thinking works." "Then we're all in danger." A voice washed through the hall, layered with harmonics that made it feel older than the speaker. "Delegation of Terra." Ree stepped forward to the marked spot, an invisible pressure in the floor that guided her feet. Marek followed half a pace behind, where translators were meant to exist. Useful, quiet, forgettable. And then he saw her. The queen looked disarmingly human at first glance. Regal face, composed mouth, until the long ears angled back from her head like swept blades. She sat as if the throne were an accessory and authority lived under her skin. The herald recited titles that sounded less like a name and more like an engineered structure. Marek's implant fed him the correct address, the correct cadence, the correct everything. Ree began, "Careful. Your radiance..." 2 fingers lifted. The room obeyed instantly. "Speak," the queen said, and the single word landed like a seal. Ree delivered greetings and intentions, diplomatic fog wrapped in politeness. Marek translated with smooth precision, turning human caution into Lyran formality and back again. He was good at this. He could survive a queen. Then a memory slid through him, bright, stupid, impossible to ignore. A salvaged audio shard from years ago, a damaged Lyran transport. A young voice laughing, unguarded, repeating a name like it belonged to a different life. Marek had practiced it once in a lab at 2 a.m., telling himself it was just phonetics. Ree finished her sentence. The hall held its breath. Marek's implant offered him the appropriate silence. Instead, Marek spoke. "Saya." The name fell into the hall like a dropped blade. The queen froze. Not a diplomatic pause, but a true interruption, as if someone had cut power to a flawless machine. Her long ears tilted a fraction. Involuntary. Guards tightened their grips. Marek tasted copper and regret. The queen's gaze locked onto him hard enough to thin the air. "How?" she said, stripped of harmonics and ceremony. "Do you know that?" The queen's question hung in the hall like a blade that hadn't decided where to fall. Marek's implant suggested silence. His mouth, already guilty, chose a plea bargain. "I heard it once," he said, "years ago, in a salvage archive." "From where?" the queen asked. "A data shard," Marek said, keeping his hands still. "Damaged audio, a young voice. I didn't know it was yours." 2 fingers lifted. 2 guards glided forward with the calm of practiced certainty. "Translator Marek Vale will answer in a secure chamber," the queen said. Ambassador Ree forced a polite cough. "Your Radiance? He is under diplomatic protection." The queen's eyes stayed on Marek. "So am I." Marek leaned a fraction toward Ree. "If I vanish, tell Earth I died bravely." Ree hissed, "Don't you dare." "Fine," Marek whispered. "Tell them I died confusingly." His implant chimed, cheerful, unauthorized intimate address, treason class utterance. Marek did not ask follow-up questions. The escort wasn't rough, that was the problem. He was moved like a chess piece, not a prisoner. They guided him through quieter corridors and into a bright room with 1 chair in the center, pale composite, molded to hold a body still. Above it hung a ring with fine filaments. An alien woman entered, unarmored but severe, long ears swept back, face arranged into professional disinterest. She carried a palm-sized device that pulsed faintly. "Sit," she said. Marek sat. The chair tightened around him with polite firmness. He decided he hated polite furniture. The woman held the device near his mouth. "State your involvement with the forbidden name." "In my culture we start with hello," Marek said. "Maybe water." "No water," she replied. "State your involvement." Marek exhaled. "I was contracted for salvage translation. A recovery group bought debris, memory fragments from a dead system. 1 shard had audio. A girl's voice said that name. The device brightened. A sharp metallic taste bit his tongue. He blinked. "It does that on purpose?" "It responds to deception," she said. "That's inconvenient," Marek muttered. "My whole personality is exaggeration." The taste eased slightly. "Why speak it before the court?" she asked. "I didn't plan to," Marek said. "It slipped out." "Names do not slip." "With respect," Marek replied, "my brain slips constantly. It's basically a workplace hazard." The device pulsed again, warning bright. Marek corrected himself. I recognized her cadence. The formal title sounded like a mask. The other name felt, real. A seam opened in the air. The room's light seemed to straighten itself. The queen stepped in. No guards, no herald, just her and the way the room quietly submitted. Up close, she was painfully human in proportion, until the long ears, the faint shimmer of interface nodes at her throat, the stillness that wasn't calm so much as controlled. The interrogator snapped upright. "Your Radiance." "Leave," the queen said. The woman hesitated for a heartbeat, then withdrew. The seam sealed. Marek was alone with a monarch and a chair that wanted him pinned. The queen stopped beside him. "How did a human salvage worker obtain my childhood voice?" Marek kept his gaze steady. "We didn't know whose it was. It was filed as miscellaneous audio. I listened once. I remembered. That's all." "Where is it now?" "Earth," Marek said. "Locked storage. If it's still there, humans treat archives the way they treat diets. Good intentions and sudden disasters." For the first time, her composure wavered, not in her mouth, but in the smallest flick of those long ears. "If you are lying," she said softly, "this citadel will remove the truth from you." Marek nodded. "I'm not lying. I'm just spectacularly unlucky." Her eyes held him, weighing him as threat and tool at once. "Then you are either dangerous," she said, "or useful." Marek found a laugh he didn't fully trust. "I'd like to apply for useful. If there's paperwork, I'm excellent with forms." The queen turned toward the door seam. "Stand." The chair released him with reluctant disappointment. Marek rose, ribs aching as if the furniture had taken the breakup personally. "You will remain in the inner ring," the queen said, "until I decide what you are." A thin band of dark metal slid out from the wall and snapped around his wrist with a click. Warm and undeniably present, his implant translated the band's tiny pulse as a sentence. Authorized presence, tracking enabled. Marek stared at it. So, I'm useful with accessories now. He followed her anyway because the alternative was staying behind and becoming a rumor. As the seam opened, his implant whispered an update in a voice too cheerful. Subject reclassified asset. Marek blinked. Did your building just call me an asset? The Queen did not look back. Do not make it reconsider. Marek stepped into the corridor and realized too late that he had just been promoted into the most dangerous job of his life. Marek learned quickly that inner ring meant close enough to power to feel its heat, and close enough to be the first thing that burned. They didn't put him in a cell, they put him in a suite that smelled faintly of sterilized kindness, and had a bed that adjusted to his spine like it was trying to negotiate peace. The door had no handle. His wristband did, however, have opinions. Authorized zone. Here. Unauthorized zone. Not here. Current status. Still breathing. Marek lifted his wrist toward the ceiling. Do you also announce when I'm allowed to blink, or is that a premium feature? The Citadel offered silence, which was on brand. A seam opened in the wall, 2 guards appeared, and behind them the Queen stepped through alone, as if escorts were for people who needed reassurance. Up close, her face was almost human, until the long ears, the faint interface nodes at her throat, and the stillness that wasn't calm so much as controlled. You will come, she said. Marek stood, walking, or the elegant version of kidnapping. You will walk, she replied. Then after a pause that felt like she'd chosen restraint with effort, do not attempt to run. I ran once, Marek said. I tore a ligament and my dignity. Both are still sensitive. One of her ears flicked, tiny, involuntary, then returned to perfect composure. You speak too much. I speak for a living, Marek said. If I stop, I'll have to start thinking, and that's how accidents happen. They moved through quieter corridors, where the walls glowed with darker circuitry, like restrained lightning under skin. The floor absorbed footsteps. Sensors brushed his arms with cold, invisible attention. Marek kept his hands visible and his jokes small, which was a new experience for him. They reached a door of black crystal. The Queen placed her palm against it. The crystal warmed, softened, and became translucent. Inside, the air was full of faint, floating threads, like dust motes that had formed a disciplined religion. The archive, Marek murmured. The Queen's gaze cut to him. You were briefed. Humans brief when they're scared, Marek said. It's our love language. She stepped in. The room seemed to recognize her, threads aligning into slow spirals, as if greeting a familiar heartbeat. A chair formed from the floor beneath Marek, with unsettling helpfulness. Sit, she said. Marek sat. Your citadel makes furniture like it's offended by standing. She ignored that. A small case rose from a pedestal that hadn't existed a moment before. Inside lay a strand of silver filament so fine it barely seemed real. A bridge, the Queen said. Marek's stomach tightened. Bridges usually go over things. This goes through, she replied. Your implant translates language. It cannot translate fidelity. Fidelity, Marek echoed. That's also where my personal life tends to malfunction. Her expression didn't change, but his wristband gave a single pulse that felt suspiciously like disapproval. The Queen's fingers were precise. The filament touched behind Marek's ear and slipped under his skin with a cold bloom. His vision fractured into delicate grids, then snapped into alignment. The floating threads in the room suddenly looked less like dust and more like attention, like the archive was looking back. Marek swallowed. Okay, I understand why your people don't do small talk. Focus, she said. The air in front of them condensed into layered light, unfolding like petals. Sensation washed into Marek that wasn't his. Cool wind, metal corridors, laughter echoing too brightly to belong in a palace. A young voice spoke, clearer than any salvage shard. Saya, In the memory, the name wasn't forbidden, it was gentle. It landed like a hand in someone's hair, like safety being promised. Marek felt his throat tighten. The queen didn't move, but the stillness around her shifted. Something held too long. The memory jumped, a door sliding shut, hurried footsteps, a deeper voice answering, soft, urgent, shaping Lyran sounds around a tongue that wasn't born to them. The archive refused to render a face. The place where identity should be was blurred, edited, rubbed away. But the voice remained, human adjacent, close enough that Marek's body recognized the rhythm. The voice said the name again, and fear lived under it, wrapped in tenderness like armor. Marek whispered, "That accent isn't Lyran." The queen's jaw tightened. No. The threads flared sharply, the temperature dropped. A tone sounded, too perfect, too cold to be meant for living ears. Containment protocol engaged. Marek's implant translated, suddenly strained. Contamination detected. The chair locked around his legs. Static burned along the bridge behind his ear. Light in front of them snapped into an angular shape. A security ghost, all geometry and decision, turning toward Marek like he was a stain. Purge the foreign thread, it pulsed. Marek tried to inhale and discovered the room had filed breathing under optional. He managed a thin rasp anyway. "Your Radiance," he said, "I would like to officially withdraw my application for useful and resubmit under quietly harmless." The queen stepped forward. For the first time, her composure didn't look regal. It looked sharp. "By biometric authority of the throne," she said, voice carrying weight the room could not ignore. "Stand down." The security ghost hesitated, as if doubt was a language it didn't like speaking. The queen's long ears angled back, not elegant now, but fierce. "Now." The threads slackened. The chair released Marek with a gasp. The hostile shape dissolved into dim particles that sank into the floor like ash. Silence returned, different this time, not trained, stunned. Marek sat trembling, the bridge behind his ear still humming with borrowed sensation. He looked up at the queen and saw it, the smallest tremor in her fingers, the fraction of a breath she hadn't perfectly controlled. "You just overrode an ancient purge protocol," he said. "Yes," she replied, gaze still fixed on the fading memory, as if the human-adjacent voice might speak again. "They're going to hate me for that," Marek said. The queen finally looked at him. "They already do." Marek forced a shaky exhale that almost became a laugh. "Then we're aligned." The queen's eyes held his. Threat and tool, yes, but something else underneath, newly exposed by the archive's light. "The name," she said quietly, "is not the danger." Marek nodded, because he could still hear the fear wrapped in tenderness. "No," he said, "it's what the name is attached to." The next morning, Marek discovered the Citadel had a new hobby, pretending he wasn't there while rearranging the universe around him. Breakfast arrived without a person delivering it, just a tray sliding out of the wall like the station was shy. The food looked elegant in a way that made him suspicious. A pale spiral of something steamed softly, and his wristband gave a cheerful pulse. Nutrition dispensed, safe for human consumption. Marek stared at the spiral. That is exactly what poison would say if it learned marketing. He ate anyway, because fear didn't fill stomachs, and the Citadel's idea of safe had already included a chair that tried to strangle him. An hour later, his door chimed and refused to open when he asked it to. 2 guards appeared instead, as if the corridor had spawned them. The lead guard's long ears angled back in polite severity. "You will proceed to inquiry." Marek stood, lifting his hands slightly. "Just so I'm clear, is this the kind of inquiry where I get to keep my organs afterward?" Silence. He sighed. "I'll take that as a maybe." They led him through halls that felt newly awake. The Citadel's lighting seemed brighter, colder, as if it had decided to be less welcoming since yesterday's incident. Along the way, Marek caught glimpses of nobles watching from alcoves, faces composed, ears still, eyes following him like he was a contagious idea. He was escorted into a chamber shaped like a bowl. At its center hovered a thin ring of light, rotating slowly. Around it stood advisors and officials in layered robes, each one wearing calm like a weapon. The intelligence director, severe, unarmored, long ears rigid, waited with the same palm-sized truth device Marek had come to dislike, and then the Queen arrived. No announcement, no procession. The room simply recalibrated around her as if gravity had remembered who it belonged to. She looked exactly as she had in the archive chamber, human in proportion, alien in stillness, long ears angled back in quiet control. Except now there was something faintly sharpened in her gaze. A decision made. The intelligence director spoke first. Your Radiance, the court demands the human be surrendered for extraction. His unauthorized utterance triggered a throne-class containment protocol. Marek's implant translated extraction with a helpful footnote of dread. He kept his voice low. For the record, I regret my entire mouth. The director's eyes flicked to him. Silence. Marek nodded. Yes, I'm very good at that. People often say, a guard's spear tip shimmered a little brighter. Marek stopped talking mid-syllable. He decided survival was a stronger personality trait than comedy. The Queen raised 2 fingers. The room quieted, resentful. He will not be surrendered, she said. A murmur rippled through the advisors, not loud. Lyrans didn't waste volume, but full of calculations. The name is sealed for a reason, one noble said, voice smooth as polished stone. If a human speaks it, the seal has failed. The failure must be contained. The human may be a planted vector, another added. A foreign thread. Marek didn't love being referred to as a thread. Threads got pulled. The Queen's gaze traveled the circle, taking inventory of loyalties. He spoke what he heard, she said. The archive confirmed the memory's fidelity. The danger is not his mouth, it is the origin. The intelligence director's jaw tightened. Your Radiance, the origin implies... Do not imply, the Queen said. The temperature of her voice dropped a degree. Bring me facts. A pause. One of those political pauses where everyone pretends to breathe normally while the air picks sides. Finally, the Queen looked at Marek. Tell them. Marek swallowed. He kept his words careful, clean, like carrying water through a room full of sparks. Years ago, I worked salvage translation for a human recovery group. We purchased debris lots from a broker operating near a dead system. One shard contained audio. A young voice said the name. That is all I knew. And you kept it? The director demanded. I didn't keep it, Marek said, then immediately regretted speaking without permission. He corrected himself softer. It was filed, archived. Humans are excellent at forgetting where we put important things. We lose keys, we lose governments. It's a gift. A few Lyran faces tightened at that. One advisor's ear flicked, either irritation or impossibly amusement. The Queen turned slightly toward the circle again. Until the origin is located, he remains under my authority. A noble stepped forward. You would bind your throne to a foreigner's accident? The Queen's long ears angled back, fierce in their restraint. I would bind my throne to the truth. The words hit the chamber like a sealed door slamming shut. Marek felt the decision settle around his wristband. It pulsed, warm, as if pleased. Authorized status, updated, royal asset, protection level, elevated, failure, consequence, unspecified. Marek glanced down. Your citadel just promoted me again. The Queen didn't look at him, but her voice softened by a fraction. Do not celebrate. I wasn't, Marek said. I was mourning. The inquiry ended without a vote, which meant it ended with a warning. As Marek was escorted back through the corridors, the stares were sharper. He could feel factions forming behind eyes, alliances knitting themselves in silence. Halfway to his suite, a maintenance drone drifted from an overhead panel, small, smooth, shaped like a silver seed. It hovered near Marek's neck with gentle intent. Finally, Marek murmured. Someone brought me a gift. The drone's needle snapped out. One guard moved faster than thought. A spear butt struck the drone midair, sending it skittering across the floor in sparking pieces. The needle clattered harmlessly. Marek stared. Okay, not a gift. The guard didn't speak. She just positioned herself half a step closer to Marek, as if his body was now part of her job description. By the time Marek reached his suite, the Queen was already there, standing by the window that looked down at the planet's night side. The citadel's light drew clean lines along her face. The long ears made her silhouette feel like a crown made of intent. They tried to inject you, she said, without turning. Marek held up his wrist. I'm starting to think your palace has abandonment issues. The Queen finally looked at him. Someone wants you removed before you remember more. I would like to formally state, Marek said, that I do not enjoy remembering. Too late, she replied. She crossed the room, and for a moment Marek caught something in her expression. Fatigue buried under authority, a memory pressing at the edges of control. We will not remain here, she said. Marek blinked. We? The Queen's gaze held his, steady and unyielding. The archive thread is waking. It is gathering. There is a place it calls to, a border station, abandoned, hidden. If the origin exists intact, it will be there. Marek tried to make his voice light and failed. And the people who want me injected, they'll follow. Yes, the Queen said. Marek let out a thin breath that almost became a laugh. I've always wanted to travel with royalty. I just assumed there would be fewer needles. The Queen's long ear flicked, barely, but real. Prepare, she said. And Marek Vale, he straightened. Yes, your radiance? Her voice dropped, quiet enough that it felt like an admission. Do not speak that name again. Not here. Marek nodded once. Understood. Outside, beyond the window, the patrol craft continued their disciplined arcs, drawing geometry over the dark planet like an empire practicing its grip. And somewhere in the Citadel's hidden veins, a memory had stirred, old enough to scare machines, intimate enough to unmake a queen. The royal shuttle was smaller than Marek expected and quieter in the way expensive things got when they were confident no one would question them. The Queen sat opposite him perfectly still, as if movement was something she only did when it mattered. Two guards stood by the hatch with the same expression they'd worn in the audience hall, which Marek was beginning to suspect was the only expression they owned. A harness slid out of the seat and latched across Marek's chest without asking. His wristband pulsed, helpful as ever. Secure transport, compliance required. Marek looked down at the straps. Your radiance, your furniture is very affectionate. It is cautious, she said. I envy it, Marek replied. I also wish to be cautious without doing anything. The Queen's long ears angled back almost imperceptibly. Do not speak too much. I'm not speaking too much, Marek said. I'm speaking just enough to stop my organs from staging a revolt. The shuttle detached with a soft shudder. Marek felt the Citadel's gravity release him like a hand letting go. Outside the viewport, the palace station receded, glittering, enormous, judgmental, and the planet's dark curve turned slowly beneath them, indifferent to politics and very committed to being round. They ran dark. No external lights, no broadcast signature. The kind of stealth that felt less like hiding and more like pretending you were never born. Marek's implant whispered local changes, updating him on radiation pockets and silent pulse comms he couldn't hear. Behind his ear, the archive bridge hummed faintly, a nerve remembering a song. You said the archive thread is gathering, Marek murmured after a long stretch of silence. Like, physically gathering? The Queen's gaze stayed forward. The archive technology does not store in one place. It scatters, survives, returns when the correct pattern appears. Like a very dramatic lost and found, Marek said. Yes, she replied, and it sounded almost like she agreed. Hours later, the stars shifted in a way Marek's eyes couldn't rationalize. The navigation display showed coordinates that made no sense, numbers that refused to sit still, as if the system was measuring a location that didn't like being measured. The shuttle slowed. The Queen spoke a single command in her language, and the cockpit responded with a soft chime that felt like a bow. Then Marek saw it. A station, or what used to be one, drifting in a pocket of shadow that shouldn't exist. Its hull was scarred, panels missing, sections fused by old heat. A shroud field clung to it like a bruise, bending starlight around its frame. No beacons, no traffic, no signs anyone had breathed there in decades. Marek swallowed. That looks abandoned. It is, the Queen said. And it is not. The docking collar accepted them with reluctant precision. When the hatch opened, air spilled in, thin, cold, carrying the faint metallic scent of systems that had been running too long without being loved. The guards moved first, their scanners swept the corridor beyond, and the readings made Marek's implant itch. Unstable gravity pockets, dormant security nodes, residual quantum noise. Marek stepped onto the station and felt the floor vibrate under his boots like a heartbeat trying to remember how to beat. His wristband pulsed again. Anomalous signal, probability, shard activity. Marek stared at it. Even your bracelet is nervous. It is correct to be, the Queen said. They moved through corridors that flickered between dim and dark, lights stuttering as if unsure whether to wake. In places, the walls were patched with foreign metal, different era, different craftsmanship, suggesting someone had tried to keep this station alive long after it should have died. Marek's archive bridge began to warm, a slow rising sensation that felt like someone drawing a fingertip across the inside of his skull. He stopped. It's stronger. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. It recognizes you as a carrier. Wonderful, Marek said. I always wanted to be recognized by haunted space debris. They reached a chamber where the ceiling had collapsed and been replaced by a lattice of emergency plating. In the center hovered a sphere of layered light, about the size of Marek's head, suspended by nothing. Threads of faint luminescence spiraled around it like moths trapped in a slow dance. The sphere pulsed once. Marek's vision fractured. Not pain, alignment. The station's air thickened with sensation. Sound arrived before it had a source. Laughter, footsteps, a door slamming. The same young voice, clearer than ever, saying the forbidden name, like it was ordinary, like it was safe. Marek's mouth went dry. Your radiance... The Queen stepped closer. Her composure held, but Marek saw it. The tiny tension in her throat, the way her long ears tilted, as if listening to something far away and far too personal. The memory unfolded, and this time it wasn't just sound, it was place. Narrow corridors, dim emergency lights. A child's breath coming too fast. Someone lifting her, carrying her, whispering in a voice that still didn't belong. Human adjacent again, closer now. He spoke the name gently and added words Marek's implant struggled to render because the emotion was louder than the language. Stay small, stay quiet, keep your ears down. Marek blinked hard because the phrase felt like it had been said by someone who knew exactly how to hide a child who didn't belong. The Queen's hand rose slightly, as if she might touch the light. She didn't. He told me that, she said, voice quiet enough to be dangerous. When I was... The station shuddered. A tone sounded from somewhere deep in the hull, not the archive's sterile alarm. This was a mechanical warning, old and blunt. A panel on the far wall sparked, and a door seam that had been sealed by centuries snapped open with a scream of metal. Shadows moved. Marek's guards raised their spears. The Queen did not step back. Her long ears angled rearward, fierce, and Marek realized he'd only ever seen that look in Predators that had decided the world needed correcting. Figures poured in. Lyran, but wrong. Their armor was matte, unmarked, designed to drink light. In their hands were phase cutters that hummed with a sound Marek felt in his teeth. Not ceremonial. The nearest attacker lifted his weapon. Asset retrieval, his implant rendered cold. Remove the human. Marek lifted his hands reflexively. Hello, he said, because panic made him polite. I'd like to decline. The first phase cut swung. A guard intercepted, spear meeting humming blade with a crack that warped the air. Gravity flickered. Marek's stomach lurched as the floor briefly forgot which way down went. The Queen moved. Fast, controlled, terrifying. She struck an attacker's wrist, twisted, and the phase cutter clattered away, skittering across the floor and slicing a clean line through a support rail as it passed. Marek stared at the line. That is an aggressive design choice, he wheezed. Move, the Queen snapped. Marek backed toward the hovering sphere, because of course that was where the universe wanted him. The archive light pulsed again, and his bridge flared hot behind his ear. Instinct, borrowed from the archive's cold intelligence, told him the station's dormant systems were listening. Marek reached into the sensation like grabbing a railing in the dark. Okay, he muttered, half prayer, half insult. If you're a haunted security system, now would be an amazing time to be helpful, the station answered. Panels along the walls lit in thin lines. Old defense drones dropped from ceiling recesses like sleeping insects waking angry. A voice, flat, ancient, spoke through the corridor. Containment, foreign presence, threat. The attackers hesitated. The Queen glanced at Marek and for a fraction of a second he saw it. The question, "Did you just do that?" Marek swallowed. "I didn't do it," he said quickly. "I asked nicely." A drone fired. One attacker went down, armor smoking. The others surged forward anyway, desperate now, and Marek realized they hadn't come to win. They'd come to erase. The sphere of light pulsed harder, threads spiraling faster. In the memory stream, the human-adjacent voice returned, urgent and close, and Marek felt the Queen stiffen, as if the past had reached out and grabbed her by the throat. Then, underneath the memory, another signal began to rise, faint at first, then clearer, like a whisper becoming a call. Marek's wristband vibrated almost continuously. Probability. Shards synchronizing. Origin. Cache near. Access. Window opening. Marek looked at the Queen, at the attackers closing in, at the station waking into violence, and he understood with sudden clarity why someone wanted him injected in a corridor back at the Citadel. Because this wasn't just a memory. It was a door, and it had just started to open. The station answered Marek's plea with offended violence. Defense drones dropped, old emitters spat white arcs, and the matte-armored attackers suddenly had to negotiate with a relic that did not negotiate. "Move," the Queen said, and Marek stumbled toward the pulsing sphere while gravity flickered. His bridge burned behind his ear. The light throbbed in time with his pulse as if anxiety was an acceptable clock. Access. Window opening, his wristband insisted. "Your bracelet is optimistic," Marek panted. "It is correct," the Queen said, turning a face cut away from his head like she was correcting posture. A corridor beyond the chamber lit in thin lines, systems waking in sequence. Marek reached toward the sphere and felt the station accept him like a key it had been waiting to resent. Light poured through his senses, metal, a child's breath, the forbidden name spoken softly, and then the deeper layer, nobles in shadow, a handler's promise spoken like a chain, not a rescuer, a controller. The memory shifted. Someone knocked the handler's hand away and lifted the child, gentle, urgent, and the human adjacent voice returned, "Stay with me," like that was law. No face, only the sensation of someone who had erased himself on purpose. The Queen's long ears trembled once. "They built my reign," she said, "with a child." A drone cut down the nearest attacker. The station's ancient voice spoke, flat and final. Origin Kashi unsealed. A column unfolded from the floor, petals of crystal opening around a dark lattice, memory made solid. When the Queen touched it, the chamber softened as if the station exhaled. Data spilled into the air with emotional fidelity stamped into every frame. The pale ring, names and faces, the purge plan, the station as a hidden cradle for a stolen heir, and threaded through it a human signature, an early envoy who chose anonymity over credit. Proof unforgeable. The station confirmed. The remaining attackers fled not from spears, but from history. The royal shuttle tore free. The station did not follow. It simply transferred the cache into the Queen's systems, passing the burden back to its rightful owner. Back in the Citadel, the Queen convened the court before anyone could bury the evidence. The archive chamber became a tribunal. Nobles watched with careful faces, ears held still like lies kept in place. The forbidden name was sealed to protect a deception, the Queen said, and opened the cache. No speeches. Memory with fidelity. Fear that tasted true. Tenderness that couldn't be imitated. Cruelty that made even bored aristocrats swallow. Pale ring elders tried denial. The archive answered them with hollowness. Arrests followed, swift and surgical. Titles fell like brittle ornaments. When Marek spoke, he surprised himself by standing straight. "I said a name," he admitted. "Careless. But I wasn't a weapon. I was a person who heard a child in a broken recording and didn't know your empire had built a cage around her." Silence held, listening this time. Marek looked at the Queen. "You asked what I was, dangerous or useful? I think I'm just awake now." A corner of her mouth moved barely, then stay awake. She rewrote protocol that day. No more sealed childhoods, no more handlers, archive access governed by consent instead of fear. The court resisted in whispers. The Empire absorbed the shock in slow waves. Later, in a quiet corridor, Marek found himself alone with her again. You could have let them take me, he said. Yes, and you didn't. Her long ears eased back from their war angle. You were not the contamination. Marek tried for a joke and found something gentler. I'm still going to talk too much. I know, she said, and it sounded less like a warning now. That is why you will be my liaison to Terra. You will translate what is said and what is meant. Marek exhaled. So I'm employed. You are constrained, she corrected. Same thing, Marek said, just with better lighting. The Citadel's comm panels flickered. Marek's wristband vibrated. Incoming burst. Probability shard signature. A voice decoded without passing through court filters. Distorted, deliberate, human adjacent. It spoke one word first, soft as a hand on a child's head. Saya. The queen went still, not frozen, present. Then the voice added, quieter, as if sharing a secret with both of them. Marek Vale, it's time. Marek's throat tightened. Time for what? He asked, because questions were his only weapon. The voice answered with coordinates and an authentication key that matched the cache's human signature. The queen's gaze lifted, as if she could see through decades. He is alive, she said, not as hope, but as a verdict. Marek let out a thin breath. Of course, the universe would never let this end cleanly. Clean endings are for stories, the queen said. Marek nodded, feeling the weight of his band and his own spine. Then let's make sure this one ends true.
Sans Eaton Smoothie, négocié à 35 à la fermeture du magasin. Yo, je me sens un peu bad, là.
Mali, c'est ma girl.
Salut Mali! Une slotch. En vrai, je pense que je vais pouvoir faire monter la commande automatiquement en résumé. OK, good. C'est un goal, guys, que je pense qu'il est atteignable. Faut juste que... Oh, yo!
Tu vas rentrer là? C'est quoi?
Yo, c'est Adidas. Mais, guys, il y a les vestes japonaises, genre fucking rares.
Oh! Hey.
What the fuck? Si vous savez pas, là, ces vestes-là, il y a du monde qui allait au Japon juste pour se les guetter. Yo, attendez, là.
Excusez-moi.
Yo, désolé. Oups!
T'es où?
Yo, crazy!
Elle coûte 200 balles.
200 $.
C'est cute.
Salut, Unique Blue Eyes, comment tu vas? Free Fighters. Merci pour les follow, guys. Merci pour ton follow. Comment tu vas, Unique? Hein? Viva l'Algérie ou pas?
Où ça? Ça?
Ouais.
Ça, c'est Viva l'Algérie?
Non? Yo, j'essaye!
Il ressemble à quoi le drapeau de l'Algérie, Lexa? Et quelle couleur?
C'est pas bleu pâle, elle est blanc. Je me trompe de pays. Arrête.
Au moins, tu connais 1, 2, 3 Viva l'Algérie. Ça, je suis fière de toi. Attends,
Ah, c'est
je vais te montrer.
l'Argentine, ça!
Bravo. Mais je pense qu'ils ont des maillots ici. Excusez-moi, je vais juste remettre ça. Merci.
Et là, je savais pas, les gars. Adidas, c'est tellement rendu cher, là.
Ah.
Montre-moi un maillot de l'Algérie pour que je comprenne.
Je me demande s'il en reste.
Je suis sujet sensible. Non, mais j'ai...
Ah ouais,
Guys,
sujet
faut donner
sensible.
droit à l'erreur. Faut donner droit à l'erreur.
Sujet sensible.
OK.